Welcome to the First Responders Wealth Network. Our mission is to help all first responders change their mindset towards money and educate how to build long-term wealth through real estate investing. Are you ready?
David Greene, let's roll here, man. I'm excited to have you on. David Greene, not only are you a police officer in your previous life or have the experience of, you're a real estate investor, author, co-host of the podcast, a BiggerPockets podcast, and I'm super excited to have you on. You got a lot of experience, and we have that connection of being a police officer. So not a lot of people I interview have that background to get to the level that you're at. So I'm excited to share your story and all your knowledge to everyone out there.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this too. I don't really get to talk to the law enforcement community or about the law enforcement community much. Obviously, when you're a law enforcement officer in the public eye, it's a touchy subject. You have to be really careful. And then there's not a lot of people in law enforcement that really understand the importance of taking responsibility and control of their own financial future. You know, a lot of people get into this profession specifically because they tell us, oh, you're going to have a pension, you're going to have retirement, you'll be taken care of. And it's easy to fall into this line of thinking of, I'm just going to go out there and do my job and do it well. And when I hit retirement age, I'll just retire. And that's not, as you know, necessarily the case all the time. So anytime that I can serve, I can help, I can pour into the law enforcement community, I get jazzed up about that. It's still very, very, very close to my heart.
Well, I'm very appreciative, like I said. So let's get rolling. You introduce yourself. Obviously, BiggerPockets, police officer, and then you're coming out with a new book. I know you have previous books as well. So let's touch on that just to give people a background, who the heck they're listening to if they're not aware who you are, even though they should be by this point. So let's go.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I became a law enforcement officer about 9-10 years ago. I started working. I bought my first house right after the real estate crash in 2008. I actually had a lot of money saved up from working in restaurants and saving the money that I had while I was in college. So if people want to hear my story of kind of like what I did before I was a cop, that's mentioned on the BiggerPockets Money podcast, episode number 12. So if they want to download that, that'll kind of give the background of everything I did up to the point where I became a law enforcement officer. So when the economy crashed here in the United States, it was very, very easy to buy houses. They were everywhere. So I just bought like a house a year and turned them into rental properties. That's kind of how I got my start in real estate. Around 2013, the market turned around and it became really expensive. You just couldn't buy houses here anymore. So I moved to Arizona and I started buying there. A couple years later, Arizona became too expensive, so I had to move somewhere else. I went to Florida. And at that point, I had basically built a system 3 times in a row of all the people that I needed. And I realized, like, I'm just doing the same time every time I go to a new state. I'm looking for 4 different people. Once I find those people, I look for secondary people that they can help me find. And I got to where I believed I could invest anywhere with a core 4. And that's my deal finder, my lender, my property manager, and my rehab guy. And so I ended up documenting those processes and like the way that I buy houses in other areas in a book called Long Distance Real Estate Investing, How to Buy, Rehab, and Manage Out-of-State Rental Property. And that was the first book I ever wrote. I had no idea how well it would do, and it did fantastic. In its first year, it sold over 30,000 copies. I won second place for Real Estate Book of the Year. It really took off, and it did well. And then I ended up writing blogs for like BiggerPockets.com, and I write for Forbes now and a couple other websites. And that led to me becoming the co-host of the BiggerPockets podcast. And eventually I was able to step away from law enforcement. I took a leave of absence and I started selling real estate as a real estate agent. So now I do that as well as buying investment property and educating people on real estate.
That's awesome. No, that's, I mean, your reach from everything that you've written, but also your podcast is huge. I mean, it's a resource online. It's free online resource. You know, for anyone who's not familiar, even up here in Canada, I know it's directed a little more towards the American market, but obviously I'm talking to people in the States as well. So for those of you down there, you know, they hit home a little bit more than maybe up here in Canada, but the fundamentals are still the same, and no matter where you are. So, and I know you're a big, you know, you love your BRRRR strategy. And is that really how you grew your portfolio and what you preach today a little bit more?
So the BRRRR strategy it's really an acronym, and it stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And it's the
Mhm.
order that you go through when I buy a rental property. That's like the order that I go through. I call it the stages of the investment cycle.
Mhm.
And I started off doing it the traditional method, which is opposite to the BRRRR method, where you put a down payment down, you pay money to rehab a house, you have a rental, and it's cash flowing. Now, what I realized is it was very long, slow, and arduous to do that. I would find myself working 90, 100-hour weeks, sleeping in my car, didn't have time to drive home before my next shift, getting taxed very heavily. I mean, I was doing everything I could to save money so that I could then turn around and use it to buy rental properties.
Mm.
And I could probably buy 2 houses a year, maybe 3 if I just worked like the whole year long, tons of overtime.
And what were the price points of these homes that you're buying at that time?
Most of them were somewhere between $120,000 and $150,000, I'd say.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
this was in Arizona. The ones I bought in California were closer to like 150 to 250. They were probably in
Okay.
that range.
Okay.
But I realized it just takes forever to do this. You know, if I wanted to be a serious real estate investor, I couldn't keep leaving so much equity in every property. And I realized most of us do that because we think it's safer. If I have a lot of equity in a property, even if the property's value goes down, well, we're not going to be underwater, right? But that was really just nothing but a false sense of security, because whether I have equity in a property or not only matters if I'm going to sell it. If I'm going to hold my properties, what matters is if they cash flow. And even more important, what matters is if I can afford to keep them, right?
Mhm.
Like if I can
Mhm.
make the payment, it doesn't matter what that property's doing. If I have enough in reserves or I live far enough beneath my means. And so it kind of hit me that the property itself isn't what's going to control whether I keep or lose it. It's my financial ability, how well I manage my own money. For the people that lost their homes in 2008 through 2013, they all could have kept it if they had enough money in reserves or if they made enough money at their jobs. You only lost a house when you couldn't make the payment anymore.
Yep.
And that was my first eye-opening thing that, equity in a property doesn't really actually keep you safe. It's a false sense of security. And then I realized that the only time you actually make money in a real estate transaction is when you buy a property below market value, right? That's when you're actually adding value to your own net worth. And then the cash flow that you make kind of like that makes you a little bit of money every month too. And it became very clear to me that in order to continue acquiring properties, which was the goal, I needed capital. That was the one thing that you have to keep buying. And I was looking at how much capital I was dumping in my houses. If you put $30,000 as a down payment, and you spend 20 grand on a rehab, you're spending $50,000. It takes a long time to save up that money.
Mhm.
And that's why I can only buy a couple houses a year. Well, with the BRRRR strategy, what you do is you go and you buy the house for either cash or with a hard money loan or private money or some form of financing, however you buy it. But you make sure you buy a house that's well below market value, which is oftentimes going to be a fixer-upper. You then fix up the house and increase its value. And once the value's increased, that's when you go refinance it. You take the equity that you built and you pull it out in the form of capital, and then you can go reinvest that money. And I found that I was consistently getting 100% of the capital that I had put into a deal back out. And I went from being able to buy 2 houses a year to 2 houses a month with the same dollar.
Wow.
So all of these little light bulbs started going off in my mind, like the velocity of my money, how quickly I could send it out, make money, and bring it right back to me was increasing rapidly. My ROI skyrocketed because I was leaving way, way, way less money in every single deal that I did. My volume increased, which meant my skill increased from all the repetitions I was getting, and I got good. When I got good, I could analyze deals faster. I could get better deals from contractors. I would have wholesalers bringing me deals first. The
Mhm.
whole thing just got easier when I started doing this at a bigger scale. And I realized what a lot of investors are struggling with is because they're doing this on the side. If you're buying 1 house a year, how good can you really get at anything if you do it 1 time a year? Well, when you're doing it several times a month, your systems get tighter, your eye gets tighter, your standards get sharper, your team gets stronger, everything starts to improve, right? And in the law enforcement community, we know this because we all know the officers who are out there that make 1 arrest a year and don't remember how to fill out booking paperwork. And you know how I could tell if you didn't arrest a lot of people? When your handcuffs came out, how long it took you to put them on the guy. Right.
Yeah.
That was my first sign. Like, you don't do this very often, do you?
Is there rust in there still, or how
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
tight are those cuffs? Yeah.
Yeah, they've been double locked the entire time they were in their case.
Yeah,
And then,
totally.
like one of the things I looked for is I wanted to make a lot of arrests. And so when I'd put my handcuffs on, I wanted everyone to see how fast I could do it because I practiced with it, right? And then other things like your confidence, your ability to read people, how quickly you can get to the bottom of a story, how quickly you recognize, is that guy going to run or is he going to fight? Like the cops that didn't do a lot of work, they were always caught off guard, whereas kind of the street smart ones recognized this is going sideways and they were proactive. Well, that's because they do it a lot. And that's the point I'm trying to make is anytime we want to be good at anything, you got to do it a lot. And if you want to get good at real estate investing, you need to use the BRRRR strategy because that's the only way that you can step up your volume without needing just insane amounts of capital.
That's great. I mean, anytime someone wants to learn something, you definitely need to go towards someone who's doing it a lot. That's why, I always push coaching and mentors and that sort of thing, or even great books like you have coming out, which we can talk about right now. But it's not going in blind and really learning from the people that are doing it to eliminate those mistakes and the cost of time and money. So in your new book, let's talk about that. It comes out in May. Can we talk about your BRRRR book?
Yeah, I would love that. So I found that nobody had actually written a book on this. So everybody's asking, like, what's the BRRRR strategy? How do you BRRRR? People were scared because they thought it was risky. Like, I don't know. That's a lot of money to put into a deal. And there was all of these objections people had about it, but none of them were based on like anything real. Like BRRRRing is actually way less risky than the traditional method. So I realized nobody had written a book. So I decided I'd be the one to do it. BiggerPockets decided they would publish it. I wrote it and I just broke it into 5 parts. Part of the strategy, right? Buy is part 1, rehab is part 2, rent is part 3. And in each part, I break down how to master each form of it. So the buy portion, I talk about how you get good deals, how you know what's a good deal, how you find deal finders, how you keep acquiring properties. The rehab portion was all about how you work with contractors, how you estimate rehabs, how you run a rehab, how you get bids from different people, what you should rehab and what you shouldn't. The rent portion, how you analyze a property, how you get the most for rents, and so forth. And in the process of writing it, what I realized is, man, if you master each of these 5 steps, you have mastered real estate investing, right? Like if you can do each of these 5 things perfect or as good to perfect as you can get, you are what I would call a black belt real estate investor. And it just became so simple to me, Dave. Like, okay, this is what I got to do. Master buying, master rehabbing, master renting and analyzing, master refinancing and the loan portion of it. And then master the repeating aspect, which is building systems to do it over and over and over. And if you can do that, by nature, you will inherently be a really, really good real estate investor, and you should be a very wealthy person.
And you've been able to do that not only just in your own backyard, you've been able to do that in multiple markets by literally moving and creating and being successful in each market. So, I mean, a lot of times, hearing those numbers when you first started off and how often you're buying homes. I mean, some people up here, I live in the GTA, Greater Toronto area up here in Ontario. I mean, no one can even buy homes at those prices. But,
yeah.
And I tell people time and time again, in order to sometimes get that 1% rule, you got to go outside your backyard. So whether it be, an hour, 2 hours away, well, that's okay. But even in your instance, you preach and you educate people how to go even outside your state or outside your province. Yeah. So, and you even have a book on that. So why don't we jump into that and just kind of let people know that it's okay to invest outside of your own backyard?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think combining the BRRRR strategy, which is what's going to maximize your efficiency with your capital, with the long distance strategy, which is what's going to open up opportunities for you, enables you to buy a lot of houses anywhere you go, right? Those are kind of the 2 things that if you can learn that, there's really nothing that will stop you from investing in real estate. So the long distance real estate investing book, the first thing that I tackle in there is this belief that long distance investing is risky. It's okay to think that. For a long time, everyone has talked about it. And that's because it was risky. When you were buying a property 10, 15 years ago, before you had a lot of information on the internet, you were trusting in a complete stranger who you had never met, who had no reason not to lie to you. They didn't have Yelp, and there wasn't any ways that you could go after this person. Like, you just, whatever they said was the case is what the case was. So people saw this like rich coastal money coming into the Midwest in the States. Like, most of our cheap properties are in the middle of the country. The expensive stuff is on the coast. It's probably similar for you guys.
Yeah.
A few exceptions of big cities, whatnot. And they were getting ripped off, right? But now there's so many increases to technology that I can do the same due diligence on a property in the middle of the country that I can do on one 2 doors down. The only difference is I cannot drive by the property and see it. And that's what everybody goes to. They always say, well, how do you buy a house if you never saw it, right? And I get that that's the first thing everyone thinks, but I've yet to hear anyone make a compelling argument of why seeing the property makes one difference.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to see it, right? Like it's an emotional comfort that you're looking for. There's no practical reason.
At the end of the day, you're going through a checklist. If you can get that checklist checked off, and you do your due diligence on whatever it is you're doing, you're right. There is no need to physically see it. I mean,
no, somebody needs to, right?
Oh,
you
absolutely.
need a home inspector to go by. You need a property manager to go by, or your real estate agent. Like, somebody should go. And in the book, I talk about having them make videos, having them take pictures, having them schedule the experts that do need to come in. And I have this analogy that, like, a lot of us guys, we when our car breaks down, we pop open the hood and we look at it, and we really have no idea what we're looking at. We just we just think we're supposed to, right? Like, if something is on fire, it's that thing is smoking, and if I happen to know what that thing is, I can say what the problem is, but that doesn't even mean I know how to fix that problem. I'm still going to need to go get a mechanic to look at this, right? Well, I use my home inspector and my contractor as the mechanics, and I look at their reports to make my decision. I don't need to walk by a house or drive it myself because I don't really know what I'm looking at. I'm not a car mechanic, right? And once I just accepted that that was really what was going to keep me safe, more so than my emotional comfort of seeing a house myself, I was very empowered to buy houses I've never seen. The majority of homes I own, I have never seen them in person. I will never see them in person. They're an investment that I made. I know what they're worth. I know how to run them. I have people in place that do that. It's not different than if you buy a stock. If you go buy stock in Apple, very few people are actually driving by their headquarters in Cupertino to make sure that there's actually a building there, right? We don't know where they're producing iPhones. We just believe it because we see iPhones, right? I don't need to know. I don't need to see that house. I get a check from the property manager every month, and I can see it online, and I trust that it's there.
Yeah. And there's been times, even my own property manager with my student rentals, I don't have time to go down and drive, so I'll ask them to FaceTime me. And I'll literally just do a walkthrough of the house, and I'll say, what's going on over there? And he'll literally take the phone and, zoom it up a little bit close. And that's really, you have to have your eye on, on your property, obviously, but getting those professionals and the ability to communicate. You don't need to be there. As long as you have someone who is there who you do trust.
Yeah. What I hear from a lot of people is they take the principles in that book and they apply it to their local real estate investing business, and they just make it run more efficiently.
Yep. Well, I'm sure you have lots of, gems in there that'll help in all aspects. And like you said, you're a black belt as soon as you can comprehend all those areas. So I know you say you leverage people and the ability to create those processes and have those contacts in each market. So what is your process for acquiring a property out of state?
So I'll start with my criteria. I've simplified this down to 3 criteria that I care about. One, I need to buy it under market value. So I want equity in that house. And my goal is to be all in, meaning the purchase price and the rehab, for 75% of what it will be worth when it's done. We call that the ARV, the after repair value. Criteria number 2 is I want it to cash flow. So in order to find that, I target areas that meet the 1% rule that you mentioned earlier. If they meet the 1% rule, they're very likely to cash flow. And then my third criteria is I don't want to buy anything in a war zone. I don't want bad neighborhoods. When you buy a house in a rough neighborhood, you're really not investing. You're buying yourself a job. You can make it work, but it's going to be a lot of your own time. So if a property matches those 3 criteria and I can get financing for it once I've done and fixed it up, and I can put a team together where it's at, I'll buy it. It's that simple. So the strategy is I first look for properties that I can buy under market value, which means I am usually looking for distressed properties.
Okay.
Right? I start off by looking in areas that will likely meet the 1% rule. So I go to an area, this has got a lot of 1% properties, and then I target houses that are in distress. And then I look for the ones that I think I can buy to be all in for 75% of the ARV. And then I make sure my property manager tells me that's not a bad neighborhood. I'd be happy to manage a property. That's where you want to be. And if I get the green light on all 3 of those, I write the offer. Nice.
Now, so step 1, you want to find a property that you can pay under market value for it. Now, do you deal with wholesalers, or do you deal with just agents on the ground? You got boots on the ground. Obviously, you're an agent, so you have contacts more than maybe most. But how do you go about finding the actual deal?
So wholesalers are great. if you get a reputable one. That's kind of always the tricky part of it is when somebody's not a real estate agent, but they want to sell properties, they call themselves a wholesaler. And oftentimes people get into some shady stuff there. So
you get the old message on Facebook Messenger saying, I have a few properties for you.
Yeah. And you can't trust the comps they're giving you. You can't trust any of their numbers. I mean, oftentimes this is just a deal they could have pulled off of a Zillow Make Me Move, and they're trying to get a wholesale fee to sell it. So
right.
I like reputable wholesalers that have big companies, and I look for people that are investors themselves and they're wholesaling the deals that they can't do themselves. So they've already got people in place. They know what they're doing. They run these numbers all the time, and they've got a little bit extra they can't handle. So I want to be the first guy they bring that deal to. That's my favorite wholesaler. But even that way, the majority of the deals I get come from real estate agents. And there's a lot of us that are saying like, well, there's no deals out there, right? And there's probably not deals that match my criteria in Toronto. It's a hot market. Everybody wants to be there. They have a lot of money in those areas, right? But when you're going to areas that have a lot of rental properties, you'd be surprised. Like there's still a lot of deals there that the houses aren't moving nearly as fast. Mm-hmm. So my strategy is I'm a Keller Williams agent, right? So I'll start by calling a Keller Williams office, and I'll ask for their team leader. Here's a good tip for everybody, but it doesn't have to be Keller Williams. You could do this with Coldwell Banker. You could do this with Century 21, whatever the big broker is in your area that's selling a lot of houses, right? And you ask for the team leader, the office manager, the supervisor, like whoever it is that manages the staff. Because you want the person that knows the people that work there, right? Like if you were calling a police department, you wanted to find their best cop for SWAT training or use of force stuff, you would want to call and ask for the lieutenant in charge of SWAT because he knows whose talent is in that area, right?
Right.
And I'm going to say, I need the names of your top 2 or 3 agents who have experience working with investors or invest themselves. And they're probably going to have 1, maybe 2 people that actually fit both of those criteria. They sell a lot of homes and they have experience with investing. So rather than me trying to call 100 people from the yellow pages or whatever version of the internet you guys have, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask the person who knows who his talent is. And I'm going to do that to 4 or 5 different brokerages. So I get a list of anywhere between 5 and 10 names. Then I'm going to call those agents and say, here's what I'm looking for. And here's what I'll need, right? These are the houses I'm looking for. I'll need a contractor. I'll need a lender. I'll need a property manager. Do you have people that you have used that you can trust? And maybe 2 or 3 of those agents will actually say yes, right? At that point, I've got the 2 or 3 people that are very likely to find me deals that are not going to waste my time, that do this often, like they're a rock star, right? I'm going to have a much better experience with somebody like that than just finding a random agent on Zillow or somebody saying, oh, you should try my cousin or whatever. And I end up teaching that person more about real estate investing than what they're able to help me with.
Yeah. And I've heard you say you got to, rock stars need to surround themselves by rock stars. And I love that. You need to have people on the same page, same mindset, and in that niche.
Yeah, and it's true everywhere in life, Dave. It's real. It works in real estate investing, but it works everywhere else too. Yeah. When you look at the police officers that are the most squared away, they're usually hanging out with the other ones that are the same way. Right? Mm-hmm. Like we all kind of flock to the people that are the same commitment level that we are. You've got the guys that are always trying to hide. They're the last of the call. When things get ugly, they're usually hiding in the back. They're just waiting to come in and do the paperwork. Mm-hmm. They hang out with each other when they go get coffee or whatever they go do, right? And then you got your high speed, low drag, knuckle draggers. They want to get out there, and street ninjas. They're usually hanging out with each other, right? Yeah. So if you want to be that guy, you want to go hang out with those people. You want to surround yourself. And then if you're going to do that, you better be squared away too, because they don't want you hanging out with them if you're a slug, right?
No, I hear.
It's the same way in everything in life. And it's just one of the ways that you become successful is by committing to do your very best and surrounding yourself with other people that are doing the same thing. And real estate investing is no different.
That's bang on, man. Like this, I couldn't have said that better. And you can relate to anyone, no matter what industry you're in, of people who kind of take the back road or take the the easy way to do things. And you'll see how I kind of come on full circle here. But sometimes a lot of that is just fear. So no matter what you're doing, so you say policing or whether it be fire, paramedic, anything, it's it's that fear level, like the first call you go to, you're that guy that kind of wants to stand back and kind of watch and observe, and then you get more comfortable and then you do things. And sometimes people never get out of that ability to feel uncomfortable, or that willingness to be uncomfortable to get that confidence. And I find the exact same happens with making money or your finances or doing anything outside of the workplace. So like I always preach, stop relying on pensions alone. And I know you have a lot of examples down in the States where pensions have failed people. And up here in Canada, we're a little bit more lucky, but especially in the private sector or in the
Public sector.
In the public sector up here. So I'm really trying to push people to get uncomfortable and become exposed to certain things that you can do outside of your workplace, which gets you more security for your finances, especially for retirement. So hearing someone like you, and I'm not expecting everyone to get to your level, but even if they just learn a little bit from you, buy your book, get some of those fundamentals down and get uncomfortable and take a chance in real estate. And when you do it properly, it'll come back and pay dividends for you, especially when it comes retirement, because really who knows how the pension is going to be 10, 20, 30 years down the road, because the trends are already showing it's struggling. So,
yeah,
I just hope people hear your message in the sense of, getting uncomfortable and surrounding yourself with people that are doing something that you want to do, and then hopefully they'll do it. And then realize it's not as hard as it seems. It's just the fear.
Could not agree with you more. I'll make 2 points. The first is that when you're working in something like law enforcement, you're doing it for the love of it, right? Like our identities are wrapped up in this. We're protectors, we're guardians, we're people that want to go out there and keep people safe. Mm-hmm. And so you can expect the more you give in that way, the more gratification that you'll get back as like a reward for a job well done, right? But you will not receive financial compensation for everything you do. You could go be the best cop out there and you're going to get paid the exact same as the guy who's the worst cop out there. In fact, in a way, the only way to make more money in law enforcement is to work more hours, which can maybe turn you into the worst cop because you're dragging butt all the time, really tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand what you're doing is not meant to reward you financially. It is meant to reward you emotionally. Real estate is the only thing I've come across that everything I have paid into it has paid me back financially. The more I learn about real estate, the more I commit to real estate, the more I give real estate, the more real estate gives me. And it gives me way more than I ever gave it, right? Like every year that I own this property that becomes worth more and the loan gets paid down and the rent goes up and I get better at managing it, the more it gives back to me. And I think that's why it works so well with law enforcement, particularly because as a cop, you're giving and giving and giving, and you're not always getting back. Like very rarely are you appreciated for what you did, or do people even see what you did. But with real estate, it's almost the opposite, right? It's giving me, and I haven't even given anything to that property in years, right? So it's a really nice balance that I almost needed in my soul to still feel good about stuff as you're pouring yourself out in one arena, that you're getting something back from another. So that's one of the reasons I feel like law enforcement, first responders, people that are out there serving and protecting and helping that are not being appreciated, you got to take this upon yourself so that you can get something back, because it's no one else's job to get back to you. Your pension may not be there. Your department may not be there. You may do everything right, and some other guy gets the promotion that you deserve because he politic better. And you can't complain about that because you walked into that world where that's how things work, right? Well, empower yourself and get into this world where you can actually take some of that control over your financial life back and feel good. And the other point that I would make is that when I started, so I was a deputy in a sheriff's office out here, which is a little bit different than being like a city police officer. You work the jails, the courts, you patrol some of the areas that are unincorporated. So I got a lot of experience working in the jails, and I was like hands-on with violent inmates a lot of the time. Like that's what I got thrown into law enforcement, was working in intake. Yep. These guys are coming in, gang members, drunk people. They're not kind of programmed, is what we would say, to go along with the way that things were set up in the jail. And you almost had to like break a wild stallion every single night. Right. So that was how I got started. And then I went into being a city police officer, and I was used to dealing with every contact I had was a bad guy. I didn't get to see good people when I was in the jail, right? So I come out of that and I go join with these other police officers, and they've never seen a bad guy. All their whole life, all they've seen is good people, right? So they're like shocked at some of these suspects that would fight back or would lie to them or would be dangerous. Whereas I was shocked when I saw a nice person. I'm like, can I really trust that person, right?
Yeah.
And what happened is I started with like 8 other people. And most of them had what you described earlier. They're just a little bit scared. They didn't want to go get involved. They didn't want to engage. They weren't sure of themselves. Well, I had this experience that left me to be a little more bold. So I did jump in there, and my repetitions were much higher than theirs. I got myself involved. I learned a lot faster than they did. I picked things up quicker. I figured stuff out faster, and I became a better cop than they did, right? And you take that over a 9 or 10 year career, and my experience was night and day different than what theirs was. And the only difference was I went and took action while they stayed back because they didn't feel comfortable. And I want to kind of draw a parallel between that mentality and real estate investing. Because if you do the same thing as those other cops did, I'm afraid to get in. I don't want to get engaged. What if I lose money? What if I make a mistake? What if there's a bad deal? You're the guy who goes 9 or 10 years and is very unsure of himself 9 years later when you end up in a bad situation. Whereas if you jump in there and you learn from other people, you surround yourself with rock stars, you get some experience, you make some mistakes, you take your lumps, man, your brain will figure that stuff out a lot quicker. And you will have a very successful financial career as opposed to the person that's always kind of peering in from the windows on the sideline.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be thanking yourself when you're older too. I mean, as those years continue on and they roll on, I mean, just the payback of that effort. And it's like you said, it's just, I mean, you just got to get uncomfortable and do it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
No, that's awesome. No, that's great. Well, I just want to leave our listeners, because I know obviously there's that parallel, but for first responders specifically, we're tied down to our job. Sometimes it's very stressful. It's hard to kind of think outside the box because your life is your work for many people. So, not to put you on the spot here, but what would you suggest to first responders, A, to start thinking outside the workplace, and then 2, how to really get involved and learn about real estate investing?
Most first responders understand that if they're going to be their best at the job, they also have to spend some time in the weight room. Like, physical fitness is not something that we get paid to do unless your department pays you guys to work out. We never got that.
No, I wish.
But yeah, right. Like if we were firefighters, maybe that'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, and eat and sleep. Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they always look great and we look terrible. But it's something you got to do if you want to be the best you can be at your job, right? So there's things you have to do outside of the actual job that you don't necessarily, they're not part of the job, but they help you in the job. And your financial future is the very same thing. The less control you have over it, the more you will look to your job to do something it's not intended to do. You're not intended to become wealthy working as a first responder. We're not business people.
Right.
We're helpful people, right? That doesn't mean you can't be wealthy, though. You can still take control of your own financial life. And you need to, because if you don't, you're not going to do as good of a job as a first responder. You're going to be bitter. You're going to be resentful. I mean, we've all seen the guys that have been there. It seems like the longer they're there, the worse their attitudes get. There's a handful that become happier the longer they go, but man, the majority of those guys that have been in the department a long time are not happy.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if they started at 25 and by the time they're 45, they're a multimillionaire from real estate and they never have to work overtime. And if they don't want to do something at the job, they just don't go do it. They don't put in for special assignments to get an extra 3% that they don't love, right? Those are the dudes that are usually like the most giving and the most helpful to the new guys and in the best mood because they know they're taken care of. They don't worry about if they're going to get a pay raise on the next contract or what the pension's going to be like. They're not leaving that department to go work at another one to make another $4 an hour or something like that. That's the way I would say, like, you're doing a great thing by serving your country and your community as a first responder, but you got to serve yourself and your family too. And there's no one else that's going to look out for that but yourself.
No, man. And I'm so passionate because I really do think that we deserve more. So just, I hope people go back and just listen to that because that's so powerful and so true. And, we have the ability to do more. I just hope that we do more because, we all deserve it. So that was a powerful message right there. And I couldn't agree with you more.
Thanks, Dave.
How do people get a hold of you or contact you or listen to more of your wise tales here?
So I run a blog called greenneincome.com, and Greene is spelled like my name, Greene. There's that extra little annoying E at the end. And that's where like all the podcasts I've been on, the articles that I've written, some of the deals that I've done, like anything that I've put together, I publish on that blog. So if people want to see what I'm putting out there, they can follow me there. And there's a free newsletter you can sign up for that will let you know whenever there's new content that's been added. Like once a month, it'll show all the new stuff that I did that month. So you don't have to go through the archives if you've already seen it. And then if you want to actually like follow me, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. It's David Greene 24 for everything. But Instagram is your best shot to get a hold of me. So if you're following me on Instagram and you send me like a direct message, you're way more likely to get a hold of me. For people that have my phone number, honestly, I think I have like, let's see right here.
You just texted me, so you're stuck with my random text now.
Okay, so I got 465 unread text messages and 385 unanswered voicemails, right? Like, so I'm just saying on my Instagram right now, I've got like 2 unanswered DMs. So that's probably your best shot if you want to get a hold of me just until Instagram gets flooded. But I would like people to follow me on social media. And then I'm putting together a YouTube channel, David Greene Real Estate on YouTube. And I just basically put out like daily thoughts of stuff I'm going through, what I'm learning, educational videos for selling more houses or buying rental properties, what to look for in a real estate agent, kind of like anything wealth building through real estate related. I'm really working on putting out that YouTube channel. So those are probably the best ways for people to follow me.
That's awesome. Well, tons of platforms there and lots of great resources and free content. So take advantage of that, everyone. You know your stuff, and you got a great team there behind you as well. So look forward to more of your content, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully we can motivate some people to do more for themselves, especially in the real estate world. So
if anybody out there is saying, I would buy a house, but I don't know what real estate agent to go to, send me a message. Tell me where you want to invest. I will put you in touch with a top producer in that area that either I've used before, or I'll use that method I described earlier for you and put you in touch with that person so you can get going, especially if you're a first responder or a friend or family of a first responder.
Awesome. You heard it, guys. No excuses. Let's do this. All right. Awesome, Dave. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great to meet you, Dave.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review on iTunes. Also, check out our website at 911wealthnetwork.com or contact Dave directly at 911wealthnetwork.com. Stay safe out there.